How's it going? This is Trifecta Sports Talk. I'm your host, Tanner Rebello. Alongside me today is Evan Cook. Evan, how are you doing, sir?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Doing great, Evan. Definitely doing great. We have a lot to talk about today. This weekend has been crazy in Boston sports, and it actually prompted us to have this conversation because, Julian Edelman go down on Friday night. The Isaiah Thomas-Kyrie Irving trade pretty much blow up to the point where there might be a veto. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll also talk about the Boston Red Sox and how they imploded this weekend. We'll talk about Pawtucket Red Sox and how they finished their season at home at McCoy. And we'll talk about Carlton Fisk, who was there at the game. Talk about Matt Lingle getting cut, Coney Ely getting cut. What's going on there? There's a lot to talk about, Evan. Any opening thoughts?
This was just a crazy weekend. It was really the weekend from hell if you're a Boston sports fan. It all started Friday night with Julian Edelman going down with a non-contact knee injury. Anytime you have a non-contact knee injury, it's never going to end well. Then you have the news about Isaiah Thomas's hip and how the Cavs are saying that the Celtics were not really all that, they didn't communicate well about the injury and what it actually was. And then on Friday night, the best pitcher out of the Red Sox bullpen was Mitchie Two Bags. So, yeah, it's the Red Sox are playing the worst baseball they have all season right now, and the Patriots lose their number one receiver. Yeah, it's been a great weekend.
I think it is interesting when you talk about the way Boston sports have worked the last, week and a half. Because you had the night where Doug Fister threw a one-hitter, a complete game one-hitter, and you traded for Kyrie Irving. Then on Friday, you had quite possibly the worst night in Boston sports, and that night actually ended with Mitch Moreland on the mound in the ninth inning. He was only one of two Red Sox relievers not to give up a run next to Robbie Scott. The Red Sox were atrocious this weekend, and that's my opening thought. They went against the Baltimore Orioles, a team that definitely nags them, but that's a Baltimore Orioles team that doesn't have good starting pitching. And you couldn't score runs. Something was going on there. There was a lack of clutchness that I've seen all year with this team. Last couple of weeks, you saw them start to be able to get hits, driving those runners in scoring position. But I remember writing game recaps to start the year, the first couple months, and the number one issue I always said every night was position. Look, you're left on base. Those were high, and they continue to be high. This past series illustrated that. You're now 2.5 games up on the New York Yankees, and you're facing the New York Yankees starting the 31st, I believe. So you have an interesting situation there with the Boston Red Sox because they were a lock for the playoffs. And now you're looking at them, end of August, and you're already starting to see a little bit of a collapse. I know it's one weekend series, but you got swept, and you didn't look that great in Cleveland as well. And Chris Sale does worry me, and especially if you do play Cleveland in the first round. For some reason, they have his number. I don't know if they figured him out or something, but something's up with that. So we'll see what happens with that. Any thoughts on this Red Sox team, Evan? And do you think this weekend series is more telling to what's going on?
Well, today, the worst part about today was you left 10 runners in scoring position. 10. That is horrible. You just can't do that and expect to win ball games. And you only lost 2-1. So the fact that they couldn't drive in more runs was just really, really bad. Looking at Chris Sale going towards the playoffs, I know the Indians have had his number. But Chris Sale has shown that he might be one of the fiercest competitors that we've seen in Boston in a long time. He is obsessed with winning. So I know they've already started to look at film of Chris Sale's starts against the Indians over the course of his career. But you have to assume that he's going to be able to figure it out come the playoffs, just because he's that fierce of a competitor. And that alone. Saying that, I know the Indians are a great team. This weekend, I believe they swept the Royals, and I believe they outscored them this weekend like 31-0. So, yes, they are a good team, but you got to think Chris Sale is able to overcome that just because he's such a obsessively dominant pitcher.
I do agree. I do think Chris Sale is going to be able to rebound against the Indians specifically. I think it's odd that he's having these struggles. But the Indians are a good ball club, and in my mind, they've been the best ball club in the American League for the last 2 seasons. They were going in the World Series last year against the Chicago Cubs, and feel like they've been underrated. And they're in Cleveland. They're a baseball team in Cleveland, and that's ultimately probably why they've been underrated. But if you look at the Red Sox team, Dustin Pedroia is going to come back soon. He's taking BP. David Price, I think his season's done. There's really no opportunity for rehab. But they have a good opportunity. Haley Maris has underperformed. Mookie Betts has underperformed. Alexander Bogaerts has underperformed. You look at the team as a whole and a lot of underperformers, and the fact that you are in first place in the American League East, I think is remarkable. I know it's on the back of guys like Rafael Devers, Eduardo Nunez. But the fact that they are in first and had a significant lead, 4 games, 5 games, was the lead that they have at the peak of it. I think it's pretty remarkable because I didn't think they were going to be able to do that. When you have a guy like Mookie Betts batting in the 260s, usually you're not going to be competitive. And up and down, that lineup's underperformed outside of a couple guys. So the fact that they're in first place is great. Look at their rotation. Drew Palmer has been fantastic as a whole this season. Chris Sale has been Cy Young worthy this season. We'll see if he actually wins the Cy Young. But things can get a little funky. Because last year, Rick Porcello won the Cy Young when maybe he shouldn't have. That's a debate, but... So if you look at the Red Sox team going forward, September is going to be key for them. This Yankees series, starting on the 31st, that might be it. That might be the series. And I know we say this every time the Yankees come in, every time you go to New York. The last couple of times, you said this is the series, but this is literally the series. If you go into New York and play them, we'll see what happens. I think that could determine the AL East at least.
Yeah, I completely agree about next weekend with the Yankees. It's a 4-game series starting on Thursday. You have a chance, going into the series, that you can possibly have a 4.5-game lead. So even if you do get swept, you do come out with still the AL East lead. But there is...
If that happens, if they get swept, and I know you're saying as a last case result, you still have a half-game lead. But if you get swept by the New York Yankees in a 4-game set and you still have a half-game lead, that is not good.
No, it's not. It's absolutely horrible. I don't think it's going to end up happening. I think the Red Sox are too good of a team to do that. But you do need to start hitting the ball today. You left 12 men on base, 12 men on base, 10 of them in scoring position. Mookie Betts at one point saw 6 pitches with the bases loaded. He didn't swing at one of them. That's just plain bad. You need to swing the bat. Mookie Betts has been really bad, and he's not swinging at pitches that he needs to be swinging at, pitches right down the middle. That's one of the players that you really need to get going. Otherwise, you're going to struggle. And right now, a lot of guys, like you said, a lot of guys are struggling. One of the few guys that do, one of the few guys that is starting to come out of it seems like is Alexander Bogaerts. He had a home run on Saturday. He was able to hit a big double today that started the rally in the 6th inning where they were able to score their only run. But that's just one guy. Mookie Betts was thought to possibly have a chance to win the AL MVP last year. He's been very far from that this year.
I'd say with Mookie Betts, last year he should have won the AL MVP. I mean, Mike Trout had a better season, but Betts played for a division winner, played for a team that made the playoffs. So Betts should have won that. But what you've seen out of them this year, you've seen flashes of MVP, kind of little pops. But he hasn't been able to put a collective effort together. He hasn't had multiple games, multiple series of success. And that is troubling to see. We've talked about this before where I'm not so sold on him in terms of a long-term contract right now. I was prior to the year, but I look at Mookie Betts right now, and I'm really confused at what's going on with him. And I think he is too. He needs time away from the game. And I thought that knee injury, they should have put him on the DL, but the fact is they rushed him back in there. He shouldn't have been in the lineup today. Should have been in the lineup this weekend. He should have been out of it. He needs rest. He needs to sit. And maybe he needs the offseason. Maybe that's really what this is. But he has not looked right all year. And that's definitely a troubling concern. Bogarts, he continues not to be able to put together a full season. He has a couple months where he looks like an all-star player. Then he has the back half, which usually is awful. So that's another issue with Alexander Bogaerts. Outside of Mookie Betts is, Bogart's supposed to be a superstar. And he's never really transcended to that. He's not even a star shortstop. He's not even an all-star shortstop. He's a good shortstop. But he hasn't been able to put together a full season. And they keep on waiting on him, too. And it's going to be interesting when all these contracts are up in terms of what they do, because they should probably start looking for another shortstop eventually. And maybe another right fielder. Maybe you trade for Giancarlo Betts down there. I don't know. But these guys are supposed to be superstars, and they're just not showing it. Andrew Benintendi's looked more like a superstar this season.
I do agree with you. I think they do need to start looking for another shortstop, just because Alexander Bogaerts hasn't been consistent. Well, not only offensively but defensively as well. There's time. He had a game. What was it? I think it was Friday night. He looked like he didn't care in the field. He was just he wasn't going after balls. He wasn't going after balls when they were hit. It just looked like he was lost out there. Actually, it was last Saturday night against the Yankees that I'm thinking of. But he does it so often where it just looked like he's not trying. And that's his problem. Mookie Betts, you're not going to be able to get. Well, you could get Giancarlo Stanton from Miami. The only thing is with that is he's the only marketable player down there. And the new ownership coming in, he's going to be the face of that franchise.
Right. I think that is probably true. Depends if the ownership wants that contract of Stanton. But we'll see what happens with that. Moving on from the Red Sox, because we talked a lot of Red Sox the other day on the Red Sox show. The final Red Sox show from McCoy Stadium. That was on Friday. You can find that on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/Trifecta Sports, and you will find all of that information for our last video. Moving on, we're going to talk about one of the bigger stories that came out of this weekend. If not the biggest, it depends what fan you are, if you're a football fan or a basketball fan. But we're talking about Julian Edelman, heart and soul of the New England Patriots. He went down with a non-contact injury in preseason game 3 against the Detroit Lions on Friday night. Tore his ACL, out for the season. And this is a guy who played 16 full games last year in the regular season, which is actually not something he does often. And he worked out with Alex Guerrero prior to that season. So he got into shape. He did all the right things. Previous year, 2015, he missed the final 10 games or so in the season. I'd have to look it up. But, now he's out for the year, potentially. I mean, there's a chance he comes back, but, with an ACL, they've ruled him out. So he's most likely not coming back in this season. It's a little bit different than 2015. If you look at the way they're built, in 2015, when they lost him, you just saw the offense just falter. They had a losing record without Julian Edelman at the end of that year. So if you look at this year, Brandon Cooks is coming in. Who knows how he's going to click with Tom Brady? I'm not really sold on him. He has a lot of talent. He's 23 years old. I just don't buy it till I see it when it comes to Patriots receivers, because I think with Brady, it takes a special person to click. But you have Chris Hogan coming into his second year in New England. Malcolm Mitchell's entering his second year. You have guys like Danny Amendola could have an expanded role in the offense. And then you look at guys that they have like Austin Carr, who's a guy who wasn't going to make the roster potentially, but now he maybe might make it. So I think if you look at the receiving core, the way they're built, Gronkowski's here. Should be healthy, we hope. Dwayne Allen's healthy. He's here. The running back core is deep. They don't have a big back, but I think they can survive without Julian Edelman. It's a shitty injury for him to go down like that. It's tough, something that they don't want to deal with. But I think they can deal with it this year. I think they can overcome it like they overcame the Gronkowski injury last season.
Yeah, they definitely can. The offense, back in 2015, the offense wasn't as stacked as it was this year. This year's offense is absolutely stacked. Brandon Cooks is one of the best wide receivers in this league. He's incredibly explosive.
Brandon Cooks is one of the best receivers in this league. What? What? Come on, Evan.
He's one of the most explosive wide receivers in this league. Is he?
I mean, he could be. Yeah, I think he has the potential to be, but I'm not going to go out and say, oh, he's the best receiver in this league. I don't think that. That's such a Patriots thing to say.
No, he's one of the. He is one of the
I mean,
most.
there's a reason why
no,
New Orleans traded him.
He's still one of the. Yeah, because he's undersized, but he's still one of the most explosive receivers in this league, and it's Brady has shown that he has been able to be able.
One Ev, but like top 10, top 5, top 3. What is he to you?
I would say he's a top 10 receiver in this league.
Okay, we'll see. Let's just go back and look at last year's top NFL receivers. Let's do it. Let's see where he. I mean, obviously, you can't really look at the New Orleans Saints because Drew Brees has a tendency to spread out that ball, so he's not always throwing to the same guy. I mean, what am I looking at here? I'm looking at some like ranking website. This is awful. I mean, Edelman is ranked 16th by this is Fox Sports, 15th with Doug Baldwin. Alshon Jeffrey 13. Brandon Cooks is ranked 12 on this list. Ahead of him, Amari Cooper, right? That makes sense.
Yes.
Amari Cooper. Okay. DeAndre Hopkins. Does that make sense?
I would put DeAndre Hopkins a little bit higher, but yes.
Yeah, than this. Demarius Thomas, is he better than Brandon Cooks?
Yes.
T.Y. Hilton. This one's actually kind of close for me, personally. I actually think Brandon Cooks might be better than T.Y., but T.Y. is a good receiver.
Yes.
He's also got a Des Bryant, I think Des is better than Brandon Cooks.
Okay.
Jordy Nelson.
Okay.
Mike Evans. I think Mike Evans is better. AJ Green's better. Odell Beckham, Julio Jones, Antonio Brown. So I definitely think, say this list has him 12. You say he's top 10. I think he's top 15. So, I mean, we're a couple positions, right?
I mean, it's still ahead of Julian on that list.
Right. And on the Patriots, Julian Edelman's healthy. He's a better receiver and more effective receiver than Brandon Cooks if he's healthy. So that's why this list, when you do a list like that, you can say that Brandon Cooks is more talented. We've seen very talented receivers come into New England and just fall flat. Receivers who have had a lot of success elsewhere come into New England and just not produce. So I think to look at Brandon Cooks and already say, well, he's going to be fantastic here. He's going to be elite. I hope so. But none of that's proven until it happens here. No, we saw it. Chad Ochocinco came in the camp.
How old is Chad Ochocinco when he came in the camp?
Brandon Cooks is 23 years old. Right? And he's still on the roster. Unlike Coney Ealy, who was cut. And Coney Ealy's only 25 and was a Super Bowl MVP if his team had won 2 years ago. That guy's cut. Couldn't learn the system. Defensively, though, it's a little bit different. But it really is who clicks with Tom Brady. So do you think Brandon Cooks is going to click right away? Like Chris Hogan seemed to have clicked right away, but you still saw him slowly gain that trust from Tom Brady last year. Malcolm Mitchell did the same thing. Danny Amendola took a couple seasons, I felt, to really click with Tom Brady. So I hope Brandon Cooks is going to be able to take that reign from Julian Edelman. I think it's going to be more towards Danny Amendola. Because I really do think that trust and that confidence is going to be there. Because let's face it, Brandon Cooks runs down the sideline, drops the ball. Brady's probably not going to look to him for a while. That's what he's done in his career. He just looked away from those receivers.
All right, well, let's look at the receivers that you had after Edelman had the toe injury and the Giants came back in 2015.
Oh, yeah, there was no one.
You had Gronk, who you lost for a game. You had White. You had... I don't know.
In 2015 for the New England Patriots, your receiving core, Julian Edelman went down. You had Keyshawn Martin.
Yeah, you had no one.
Rob Gronkowski. Danny Amendola was here. Danny Amendola looked good.
And actually, Amendola hurt his knee towards the end of that season.
Aaron Dobson. was here at that time. Yeah, Gronk. Scott Chandler. Keyshawn. Brandon LaFell. Brandon LaDrops. I mean, it was definitely a bad receiving core for sure. I mean, they're way better this year for that receiving core. Brandon Cooks is better than anything they had in 2015 outside of Julian Edelman. Way better for sure. I mean, there's a potential for Brandon Cooks to have a monster year. I totally see it. We have to see it actually happen first. We have to see that connection with Brady, and he's listed as the number 1 receiver here. Chris Hogan's on the list here. Danny Amendola, Matthew Slater, Tony Washington still on this team. Malcolm Mitchell, KJ May, Austin Carr, Cody Hollister, or Devin Lucien is the other receivers there. So we'll see. I think, with Edelman out, now you have a guy like Austin Carr, Devin Lucien, or Hollister who can make this team. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Because I look at it, and I want to say it's going to be Lucien or Carr. But who knows? Who really knows what's going to happen? That's going to be one of those last-minute decisions after preseason game 4. See how they perform, see what the connection was in training camp and practices. And some of them will make the practice squad, so you'll still have them. But you have to feel if Austin Carr doesn't make this roster, it's going to go to a team like the New York Jets, like Coney Ely did today. But I think they can get over it. I think we're both on the same page there, where we both think that they can move on from this Edelman injury and be fine and still be a Super Bowl contending team and all of that. What if Belichick doesn't think that? What if Belichick thinks this team needs to add a receiver now? What if he doesn't trust Austin Carr? What if he doesn't trust Cody Hollister or Devin Lucien? What if he makes a trade?
I'm just thinking through my head quickly. I really can't think of anyone they would trade for.
I know who they would trade.
Who would they trade?
Malcolm Butler. He's not staying here next year. He's going to leave. And historically, Belichick will trade him. Traded Chandler Jones. Didn't want to pay that guy. Traded Jamie Collins last year. There's other reasons for that, obviously. I mean, there were some character issues that they had with both of those guys. But I look at it. I look at Malcolm Butler. I'm actually shocked they didn't trade him this year. We heard a lot of that connection. We initially thought that Brandon Cooks was going to be traded for Malcolm Butler. That was one of the components of that. That was going to happen supposedly, but never happened. So what if they trade Malcolm Butler for a receiver?
I mean, I get why you're saying why they would do it. I just don't see why they would do it if you're looking at this year's team alone.
Right. If Belichick, what's going to help? Well, what's going to help my team win more? Is it going to be another receiver for Brady, or is it going to be Malcolm Butler
on your defense this year? Which so far in camp, I know it's only camp in 2-3 preseason games, but the defenses look like the Achilles heel of the team. The offense, like we said from 2 years ago, you not only have last year, that year you had Rob Gronkowski, Danny Amendola, Keyshawn Martin, Brandon LaFell, and James White at the end of that season. This year, you have James White, Deion Lewis, a healthy Deion Lewis, who he did have that year, but he tore his ACL. Mm-hmm. Mike Gillislee, Rex Burkhead, obviously Rob Gronkowski, Danny Amendola. Okay, so already you're way past.
Your depth compared to 2015 is immense. What I'm saying is, will Belichick trade Butler just to avoid to lose him in free agency? Will he get an asset for him? Because that's what he does. That is what Bill Belichick does. He's not going to sit on Malcolm Butler. He's going to trade him. That's the feeling I get, because that's what he does, and that's literally what he's done every year. He trades guys like that because they're not going to pay 2 top corners. They're not going to pay Malcolm Butler the money that Stephon Gilmore is getting paid right now. That's not going to happen. So is he going to let Malcolm Butler walk in free agency, or is he going to trade him? You could say they could trade him for a draft pick, but what's more important? Do you think you can click and plug at wide receiver or click and plug at cornerback? I think they're more comfortable at clicking and plugging at the cornerback position than in the receiving position, knowing what it takes to play with Tom Brady, what you need in that offense to click. Because in the NFL, offense wins games. Yeah, down 25 points, you got to make stops on defense, which they did. but you also have to come back and score, right? You have to have that. And without Julian Edelman, you don't win that Super Bowl last year. You don't come close to winning that game. So I do think if you can trade a Malcolm Butler, a guy who is not going to be here next year, for wide receiver, I'd do it. I would do it. Jarvis Landry.
I mean, if you can get Jarvis Landry in a trade, that would be a really nice pickup.
Yes.
The only thing is, anytime I think of Jarvis Landry, I think of him scoring a touchdown while he was down 21-7 in a Week 17 game last year, and then flipping out on the sidelines and throwing his helmet down like he just won the Super Bowl. That's a really big character issue in my book.
Hey, man, they brought in Randy Moss. They brought in Randall Moss and turned him around. Character issues definitely are a question, but that's something they're willing to deal with, and they can manage. They're very good at managing those kind of things.
I'm not going to argue that, but you still want to make sure you have that good defense, because right now the offense, I still think it's Super Bowl caliber. I think you got enough
running backs.
Yeah, you do. But there's just so much on offense right now for the Patriots. What else are you gonna need? Like, you're gonna need. What are you gonna have? Like 4 number 1 wide receivers?
Well, you only have one. So you only have one. You have one top 15 receiver in the NFL. Brandon Cooks. You had two. You had Julian Edelman and Brandon Cooks. Two top 15 guys. So who's your second best wide receiver? Gronkowski, different monster. So we're not going to include him obviously here. But who's your number 2 receiver?
I would say James White.
Wide receiver, not running backs. Come on.
I still think he's really good at catching the ball out of the backfield, and he's able to shift. And he's more of a wide receiver than a running back.
He's a catching back. That's what he does. He catches out of the backfield. I know what you're saying, but who's your second best? Who's going to line up on the other side? It's not going to be James White. He'll line up sometimes, but not consistently. Who's your second best wide receiver?
Chris Hogan on the other side.
You would. It would be Chris Hogan. But what I'm trying to say is, you said you have 4. You can't have 4 number 1 receivers. Well, you have one top 15 receiver in the NFL right now. And Chris Hogan, all due respect, is not anywhere close to Julian Edelman or Brandon Cooks. So your drop off now from your 1, because I did think Brandon Cooks is the most talented receiver on this team. Most effective, I don't know, because Edelman fits that really well, right? But I look at this team, now the drop-off from Cooks to your receiver number 2, not James White. You say it's Chris Hogan, right, or Danny Amendola. Your drop-off is now significant, very significant. So you're not going from rank 12 to rank 13 in the NFL. You're going from rank 12 to rank 35 or rank 30 or something like that, right? So your drop-off is now incredible. You lost a big receiver in Edelman, and they'll definitely fill it with somebody. Someone will step up, but I think you are in need of something. I think they'll be fine. Someone's going to have to step up, is what I'm saying. So Chris Hogan's going to have to develop himself into a top 20 receiver in the NFL. Or Danny Amendola. Someone's going to have to do it. Someone's going to have to make that gap up. And I don't know who will. It could be Chris Hogan. I like his chances. I think he fit really well last year. I think Malcolm Mitchell. I hope it's Malcolm Mitchell. I like seeing young receivers come for the Patriots. Because the last Patriots drafted wide receiver that had success in the NFL, who was it, Evan?
It'd be Julian Edelman.
That was a long time ago. So I hope it's Malcolm Mitchell, because they've really had some duds. We talked about Aaron Dobson, Keenan Thompson, Kimbrel Tompkins.
You're not Keenan Thompson.
Kimbrel Tompkins. Those are duds, man. I guess you could say it's Matthew Slater, the special teams captain. I don't know. I think if you trade Malcolm Butler, and if you're going to trade him, because maybe they won't. Maybe Belichick's thinking, well, let's just think about this year, not think about the future, and we'll let him walk next year. Maybe he's going to do that because they loaded up this year. They're trying to win a Super Bowl. Because I think Brady retires if they win. I think if they win 6, he's gone. I think if they don't, he stays, and that's a big deal because then you're going to be paying Jimmy Garoppolo on a franchise tag. and that would be really bad. You have a $20+ million player on your bench, backup quarterback, ride the pine until Brady retires. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I still think they're going to win 12 games. I've said that every time. They're going to go 12-4. That'll be fine.
And that's with losing like 80% of the game of the 50-50 games that you're looking at.
I think they're going to lose one game that they definitely should win. I think that's going to happen. They're going to lose to a team like the Bills once. Or the Dolphins. They'll lose one of those garbage games. And then I think they'll go 50-50 in the big games. We'll see. They have a lot of tough games, actually, this year. That's maybe why they're actually going to keep Malcolm Butler, because they're playing a lot better quarterbacks this year than they did last year. Kind of when they loaded up with Darrelle Revis. That's kind of the same feel you get this year. So we'll see what happens with that team. They should compete for a Super Bowl for sure. I mean, we say that every year, though. But every other team in the NFL is not that great. Really not that great. A lot of issues. Every team has a lot more issues than the Patriots. The Patriots' biggest issues right now is, can Steven Gostkowski kick a game-winning field goal in a playoff game, not shank anything? That's a big issue.
Is that what they do in a preseason game?
Right. Then the other issue is your defensive line, which I think they'll be able to click and plug there, because they definitely have done it. They got rid of Chandler Jones. They got rid of Jamie Collins. They lost Rob Nick. Well, that was last year, but they were able to succeed and win a Super Bowl without that. This year, Rob Ninkovich gone. Coney Ely is, he's never part of it, but he's not here anymore. Derek Rivers was injured. Dedrick Weiss had a concussion. So that D-line's a question too, but they'll be fine. And then the wide receiver is the other question, but that's nothing compared to other NFL teams. You don't have a question at quarterback here. Even if your quarterback is injured, you still have a top 10 quarterback on your bench. Arguably top 10 in the league. That's incredible. Talk about wide receivers. If you're quarterbacking, that's why you can win games. You go from Tom Brady to Jimmy Garoppolo. The drop off is definitely humongous, but Brady is the number one, which is incredible. Talk about depth. Talk about depth. And I think if Jacoby Brissett was a starting quarterback of this team, they'd still win like 7 or 8 games. Most NFL teams can't even do that.
Yeah, they would probably still. I would say they would go 9
like the Jets,
the opposite of Jeff Fisher.
Oh man. Moving on to the second biggest story this weekend. Also came out on Friday. The trade for Kyrie Irving hit a block, and most of you have probably heard this already. I'd have to imagine. It's been all over the place. The Cavaliers were claiming that the Celtics weren't straightforward about Isaiah Thomas's hip injury. He came in for a physical in Cleveland, and they didn't like the way it looked. My belief is that Cleveland knew it was an issue that they would have to deal with, but they didn't know he had to get surgery. I'm pretty sure he needs surgery, and that's probably what it was. They didn't realize it was that bad. They didn't realize he's going to be out for 4 months. But I would say that if you listen to Danny Ainge, Brad Stevens' last couple months, what they've been talking about Isaiah Thomas, the way they've been saying stuff, look at their quotes, they've kind of been alluding to it. They've kind of been alluding that IT is not going to be here for a while. But I also look at that Cleveland trade, and I say, well, if you're the Cleveland Cavaliers, you wanted the Brooklyn pick more than anything. Jay Crowder is a nice contract to have. This is a prospect. You can cut him. Not a big deal. That was just the max contracts up. Match the salaries up. But having Crowder off the bench for Cleveland, that's a big pickup for them. That's a good guy to have on your bench for sure. He's a good small forward, top 15 in the NBA.
Oh, yes, he's their sixth man.
He is. And that's a good player for Cleveland. That'll help them win. Jay Crowder will help that team win in Cleveland. Isaiah Thomas, he's out for 4 months. All right, you have Derrick Rose, your starting point guard there. And I know that's not anything to really brag about, but Derrick Rose at 50%. That's 50% of an MVP. It's still a competitive point guard. And then Thomas comes back after 4 months. He can either start for you or be the 6th man, knock Crowder back to the 7th, And Isaiah is a really pure scorer. He can help you win a championship. Because you don't need Isaiah Thomas for the first 4 months if he's out for 4 months. You don't need him if you're Cleveland. You still have LeBron James, Kevin Love. And we saw them last year. They had a really slow start to their season last year, Cleveland did. And they turned it around. So it doesn't matter. I know it's 4 months, but they can still win a championship at Cleveland, even with Isaiah out for 4 months. I think they're trying to use it for leverage. Maybe they didn't do their homework. Maybe that's really what it is. Maybe Cleveland was just really stupid. Because if they asked the Celtics, pretty sure the Celtics would have told them, "Hey, yeah, IT probably needs surgery." But the Brooklyn pick was the biggest part for Cleveland. I think they're trying to get a second round pick out of Boston. I would do that. If they want a first round pick, if they want the Celtics first, I would say no. That's where I draw the line. I'd be like, no, you guys should have known that. You're trying to go back on this trade now. You're having second thoughts. It inspires remorse. Because the second best package, I believe, was for Eric Bledsoe, the Phoenix Suns. That's a good player. That definitely helps Cleveland a lot. But the fact is, even Thomas, after 4 months, with Crowder, with that Brooklyn pick, that's going to be the best offer they get. Because I think Danny Ainge actually overpaid. I think that was an overpay, and it was an acknowledgement of overpay. Where Danny didn't win the trade, but you don't have to win every trade. So I do think that Cleveland would be stupid to go back on this because I still think it's the best trade for them. If they throw in a second round pick, I'm fine with that if I'm Boston. But Cleveland shouldn't know what they were buying.
I wouldn't even throw in the second round pick. Like you said, Cleveland should have realized he needed this. You exchanged the medical records beforehand.
Yeah, they did. That's part of the process.
They did, and then it came after the physical that they realized, oh crap, it's actually worse than we thought.
Why hasn't he had surgery yet? That's my question. Why, if he had surgery, the second the NBA the Eastern Conference Finals was over, he'd almost be ready here. He'd almost be ready for the start of the season. But the fact is, now you're sitting here, and instead of missing only a month of the season or 2 months of the season, you're going to miss four months of your NBA season here. If you're Isaiah Thomas, it makes no sense. Why would you do that? Now you're not going to get the max contract. You're not going to get anything close to it. The fact is, the fact that your health was such a question that a trade almost was vetoed or will be vetoed, you might not get a max contract because of that too. So Isaiah Thomas, top 5 scorer in the NBA, he was third in the MVP voting. He's not going to get a max contract now. I mean, it's tough, but he's not going to get it. Why didn't he get surgery? If he actually needed surgery, why, from a standpoint of him, would you not get it? You think you can play through it? You think you can do that, play on 80%? That's going to get you the contract? No. Would have got him the contract is if he got the surgery right away, rehabbed, came back, had the majority of the season to really show off and help Cleveland win a championship. But now he's going to miss 4 months of the season, potentially. He might not need surgery, but the report is he hasn't even jogged on it. And that's bad.
Yeah, he should have gotten surgery a while ago. And say at the time, early in the offseason, he was still a member of the Celtics. So to begin with, he was hurting his chance with the Celtics.
I don't get why the team wouldn't either. So I don't get it from either perspective. Why would you wait on surgery? If you're him, why would you do it? If you're Boston, why would you do it? The only thing I can think of is that you wouldn't be able to trade him if he had surgery, maybe. Maybe it was something like that where they didn't think, I don't know. It's just really weird. If he needed surgery, why didn't it happen? It's like David Price. Why didn't he get surgery in spring training for Tommy John? It's just odd. It's just odd, man.
Yeah, he should have gotten the surgery. That was thing number one. But now Cleveland is just babying because they're trying to get more out of the Celtics. The Celtics were the Celtics said they felt they were very clear with Cleveland with what happened, with what his injury was, and now, like you said, buyer's remorse. So now they're trying to get more out of the trade, more out of the trade.
So the issue is here. If Cleveland vetoes a trade, how do you come back from it if you're either team? Kyrie Irving doesn't want to be there. I mean, sure, he'd have to play. Like, he'd have to show up and play if they didn't trade him. But if say they trade for Eric Bledsoe, that's not the potential is still not as good as what you had with Boston.
Oh God, no.
And Phoenix isn't going to give you Josh Jackson, so it goes to show what teams around the league were willing to do. You look at the return for Paul George, the return for Jimmy Butler. Cleveland got a really good return for Kyrie Irving. And Kyrie might be a little bit better than those players, but it's the same tier. We're talking about superstar players in the NBA. Paul George and Jimmy Butler are both that. And Kyrie Irving is that as well. So the return they got is actually incredible. if you get Isaiah Thomas back here in Boston and he has to get surgery, who's your starting point guard? Is it Marcus Smart, Terry Rozier? What happens? Is Jaylen Brown going to be in the starting lineup? Who's going to be the starting point? I don't know. And how does Jay Crowder play here? I didn't think he could play here before the trade because I thought bringing him into that locker room with Gordon Hayward there, I didn't think that was going to end well. And I didn't know where he played. He was going to block up playing time for Tatum and Brown. How's that work? So I didn't think Jay Crowder would even work here this season. So if he comes back on the veto, I don't know what they do. They have to trade him for something. And at that point, teams are going to know you're desperate because you know the situation is going to be volatile here. And yeah, the professionals there. It's a business, but ultimately these are people who just got traded. And you saw Jay Crowder on Instagram wearing Cleveland Cavaliers apparel at the hospital where his mother just died. I don't know how they come back from it, man. They're going to, if they veto the trade, Jay Crowder is going to have to get moved again. Because he's no way he can play here. And Isaiah Thomas, a guy who gave up everything for this team, for this city, a guy who fell in love, he wants to be in Boston, he wanted to be long-term, he was traded. He must feel betrayed.
A report came out and said that he was emotionally wounded. Take what you want from that.
He should be. I would be too. Because Boston basically threw him in the trash after he helped turn the franchise around. I think Isaiah Thomas is a great player. He's one of the best scorers in the NBA. I think what he's doing at a 5'9" frame is remarkable. I love him as a player. I don't know how he comes back from it. And I don't know who's going to be your starting point guard if they do veto the trade. And I don't think they will. If you're the Boston Celtics, you cannot let this trade be vetoed, or you have to make it go through. You have to play hardball. But give Cleveland a little bit more, get it done. If it's a little bit more, do it. Just get it over with. Just bite the bullet. Because your draft picks, when's the last Boston Celtics All-Star to be drafted by Danny Ainge?
Was Pierce
No.
draft?
Nope. He's never drafted an All-Star. So this is what I would say. If you're a Celtics fan who loves all these prospects, the Garrison, Ubaselli, the Naders of the world, you like the Ziziks of the world, look, they don't usually pan out. So use the draft pick. Send it to him. First round pick, I'd be hesitant to give away. But I just don't think Ainge has had a great drafting record. I thought he took Jaylen Brown a little too high. I think Jaylen can be a good player. I just didn't see it last year. I think Jason Tatum could be a great player. I love that draft pick. But they had the number 1 pick in that draft. So we'll see what happens with that because you have to wait a couple of years to actually evaluate that. But I'd make a trade. A first-round pick, I'd be hesitant to. But if it's your first-round pick, if it's a Celtics first-round pick, and you envision yourself making the playoffs, you might as well trade that pick because it's going to be a back half of the league pick. It's going to be 20 on or something like that, maybe worse. So I'd make the trade. I'd add a little bit more into it. I would add the first round pick if it's Boston actually, if that gets it done. Because I think you have to get it done now. You can't come back from it. You can't let that happen. That'd be really bad.
Yeah. Yeah,
you're not a team. So say now you're Phoenix and you're sitting there dealing with Cleveland. And you're like, we don't want to deal with what Boston just dealt with. You're going to do the same thing to us? We've been fully transparent about everything. I know it's an injury. It's a little bit different, but how do you trust Cleveland now? And how did you trust them before? Because I didn't even know they had a GM after they fired Griffin. I had no idea.
All I knew is that he was a first year.
They lowballed a bunch of names, and they have I don't think anyone in Cleveland knows what they're doing.
Oh, God, no.
No one looked at the medical records? No one had a doctor look at anything? I mean, you're wasting LeBron James, and you have done that before, so it's not anything new. But if you're Boston, it's just as hurtful in terms of your reputation around the league, because now it's like, oh, wow, they're not as skilled as people think. They're not as good as making trades as people think. They're not winning every trade. So that kind of pokes a hole in them as well. For both sides, they need to get the trade done. I think Kyrie Irving's value goes down after this because I don't think the next trade for Cleveland for that is not going to be as high as the current trade from Boston. It just goes downhill from there because usually that's what happens. I do believe the Boston Celtics had the best package for the Indiana Pacers for Paul George, but the Pacers didn't want to wait and they were stupid. Cavaliers, they could be very stupid right here to let this one go away. Because that Brooklyn pick, I know we keep on saying it. It's not going to be as good as we think. It's not going to be the number 1 pick. But If it's top 5, top 6, that's a win for Cleveland. That's a good pick. You can make a superstar out of that pick. So we'll see what happens with that. Crazy weekend. That made us do this Trifecta Sports Talk impromptu. But it's been a good show. Thank you for coming here, Evan.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll have I guess, a Boston Bruins show, the 7th Floor show. It might launch this week. We're doing a test show, so you can find that. It might be just on YouTube, so check that out on YouTube. Like us on Facebook. Check out the website, trifectanetwork.com. That's what that's been the entire time. Might not be able to see it that well, the way the screen is. I guess I have to like change it a little bit to make it better next time. But we're looking for locations to do the show. We get anywhere, from a decent amount of viewers on this. So we've done it in Bryant University before. We've done it at McCoy Stadium, and we're looking for venues to do it in: restaurants, bars, sporting arenas, literally anywhere. Actually, I think we can do it. So if you're interested, send an email to the website. Just head over and do the contact page. Thank you for listening. This has been Trifecta Sports Talk. You have a great week.